On October 6, 2021. This is the City of Norwood Planning Commission meeting. Item A, I'd like to welcome Mr. Thomas Hockney to the Norwood Planning Commission, joining us today, and also we have one absent member, Ms. Kelly. Under new business, item C. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Schneider.
Present.
Chairman Murphy.
Present.
Mrs. Sickinger.
Present.
Mrs. Kelly. Mr. Hockney.
Present.
Approve the agenda.
Thank you. Under new business, item 1, Ted Damas, am I saying that correct?
Yes, sir.
Owner of 2200 Cameron Avenue, Norwood, Ohio. Identified the property under the Hamilton County Auditor's Book, Book 651, page 0021, parcel 0015, is requesting of the Planning Commission to review and make a determination on a proposed lot split as described in the attached documents. The plat of survey by the Arnold Surveying, LLC, was done in July of 2020, stamped and received by the Building Department September 10th, 2021. He is requesting to take the original lot of 0.224 acres and split that lot into a separate lot behind it. Is there anyone that would like to speak on that issue here today?
Mr. Thomas, would you like to speak toward this?
This is my first time in this room doing a meeting, yeah. So we would just like to split the lot, propose to split the lot so that we can build a single-family residence with the new lot. It meets the square footage. It's roughly 4,271, 135 square feet, which would be 0.098 acres. And then we're looking to build about a 1,400 square foot home, 25 by 30. So, and we can flex on that, but between 20 and 25 for the frontage, and then depth right around 30 feet. And I do have some renderings here if you'd like some materials on what we're thinking for that residence, if anybody would like those.
Having gone down and looked at the property, obviously that house that exists is a two-family?
The one that's currently standing now is a three-family.
Three-family, with no off-street parking?
We don't have a driveway. Okay. There's plenty. I don't really have any issue with the tenants with parking.
And the new house will have off-street parking?
A garage with a driveway.
And it's my understanding you would still have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for zoning variance on this?
I don't believe so. I think, Mike, we spoke.
Correct. Yeah. So good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Thomas. So when staff received this application, pretty immediately we had just a discussion. I believe I reached out within a day or so that looking at how this application did satisfy the minimum lot area requirements, which is 4,000 for both the retained and the proposed. The concern was, however, that upon applying the current standards for the R3, the front yard setback from Ellesmere and then the rear yard would essentially render about 10 feet to play with. So I did say, and I believe, if I heard you correctly, you did bring some plans showing what sort of building you could fit.
Right.
However, again, I haven't seen those things. I'd encourage you to distribute it to the Planning Commission here to look at. But my concern would be that the Planning Commission can't really proceed in earnest with approving a subdivision if it does not comply with the design standards. So with regards to the staff report dated September 13th from myself and Dan Bly, I would encourage you, if it doesn't adhere to the literal and exact standards, then at least in fairness to the applicant, he could try going to the zoning Board of Appeals to see if he could get approval. I just don't know if they would be willing to allow that, but that is one option available to you.
Yeah, I didn't think we had to do a variance just because we did shrink that footprint.
Yeah, so if you can make it fit exactly, then great, but otherwise,
This would be 20 by 35.
sorry, do you have a set we can toss that out?
I brought some more as well.
Okay. Now, do you actually have a lot layout indicating how this building, because this looks rather large.
I do have a lot layout.
Okay. Because that to me is the crucial determinant.
Yeah, it would be 20 by 30.
Do you have another set?
Here's some of those. Here's the floor. Sorry, I only brought up 3 copies of each, but and it would sit. And that is on my topo.
Yeah. So I could distribute these two, but what I'm looking at right now, as per the one you just gave me, it's showing a depth of around 24.5 feet. This one. So again, that would immediately raise the red flag that you cannot cite that until you get relief showing how that building or building envelope can be situated on the new 4,200 square foot lot.
Yeah, and we're fine to do that. I've spoken to the engineer about it. And I know I owed you some of this. I just couldn't match it because I think you were on vacation last week. But I'm happy to work with. But this footprint, the way it does meet the setback requirements.
Yeah, and it definitely appears to be an attractive quality design. But like the more pressing issue is, can that proposed building fit within the proposed lot? And that's the $1 million question. So
Yeah, with the layout the way that it is now, with that proposed split, with this footprint, it would meet those requirements.
Okay.
So that's why I don't necessarily think I would apply for a variance, just because I don't.
Well, I think you have to apply for a variance. There's no way to cite what I just saw quickly, a building with 24 plus feet depth, because I say you only have a residual of 10 feet to play with once you apply 20 feet for your front yard setback and 20 feet for your rear yard setback.
Yeah, but remember we were talking, because it's a corner lot, it would be, wouldn't I be meeting those though? Because how would you say, what technically would be the front yard?
Well, what would happen is that as you provide for the future lot right down the center, this becomes a de facto interior lot.
Sure.
So really the only corner lot will be the remainder, as it's labeled here, and that's fine. It becomes like, it's always has been a legal non-conforming house, at least with regards to the setback from Ellesmere. You have, in excess of 28, 29 feet from Cameron, but like I said, the concern is that this body can't in good conscience approve a new lot which is substandard. If there's nothing that we could put on that new lot that fits, then they can't proceed with it unless, as I said, the Board of Zoning Appeals is willing to grant you approval.
Okay.
So that's the key determinant.
And that would be today if they would grant that?
No, that's an entirely separate body altogether.
Okay.
So you would have to.
Yeah, I just didn't want to, because to get the drawings, would cost me about $7,000 to $8,000. So I just wanted to, before I even, get to that point, that was one of the goals I had for today's meeting, just that it could be.
My belief, like I say, unless you can definitively show us right now that it fits within that residual area, to us it's a non-starter, I think. If I'm not speaking out of turn for.
No, yeah. Okay, so you would want to see that then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, it's your decision if you think you can proceed, but like once you meet with your architect or the surveyor, it'll be instantaneous if you can get this and how realistically. And they can advise you typically what's not necessarily our track record. I'm not the best person to speak because I've only been here 4 months, but it's not an easy task to prove. You have to have well-founded arguments to win your case for a dimensional variance.
Okay.
So
your suggestion to me then would be to go ahead and meet with the architect and.
yeah, I would meet with them first, and then I'm happy to sit down with you, or all three of us in terms of your consultant, to look at possible options. But like I said, that to me would be the logical order of things.
Do you want me to leave these with you then?
Yeah, that would be helpful if you can.
So, and then these were also just some of the other renderings that I had too, as well. With the specs. And these were just some other renderings.
Different options, okay.
Yeah.
But is there a particular, like, what is your preference? Because I saw it, I thought one had, was it a 3-car garage or is just?
The white one is the one that I prefer. I think that would be the, bring the most value to the neighborhood.
Okay.
But, this is another rendering. This is without a garage.
Okay.
This is with a garage, but it kind of is a little bit wider than we wanted.
Well, I say ultimately, I would say you should pick whatever design it's cost effective for you and will fit in terms of the current zoning.
Okay, that would be this one then.
Okay.
So that one is the 30 by 24, which would satisfy the square footage and all the setbacks. And that's a picture of the inside there as well. I think I gave you this one already, Mike, but I'm not sure. But that's the.
Okay.
Okay, we got our next order of business. We're not making a decision on this, correct?
What would I have had to have today to make a decision on it? The actual drawings?
Well, you would either have to have an actual survey showing that product building sitting on the lot and satisfying, like to a T, all of these setback provisions.
So I might as well just go ahead with the site plan then, with the engineer on that.
Yeah, and again, you'll know what you need to do immediately from that. And again, then it becomes a question between you and your designer as to what are your chances before the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay.
And as I said, I'm happy to sit with both you and your consultant and toss around options. So.
Okay, great. I guess should we just connect them on via email or after this meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for me though. You don't need anything else.
No, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Let's see, the first one was a tough one for Tom. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
The next item on our agenda, item 2, Nick Lingenfelser of PLK Communities is requesting the Planning Commission consider proposed private street names for the streets that will be in the Factory 52 area. Those names, suggested names include Maverick Drive, Park Avenue Extension, Bicycle Boulevard, and Morgan Way. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Lingenfelter, can you tell us how do you come up with these crazy names? What's the idea behind this?
Well, I'd start by saying I don't think they're crazy, but I do appreciate the comment there. So a couple of things that happened. One, in redesigning the Factory 52 development, understanding the history was the former United States playing card facility. So the first thing we started with, what were the most prominent brands they made, which was Bicycle Bee, Aviator, Hoyle, brands like that. We were working with them closely to talk, what do we think were the most logical names. So the bicycle name, for instance, came specifically from the bicycle brand. If you remember, historically, the site always had a bicycle water tower. Unfortunately, I can't bring a water tower back. Don't want to pay for it. But, the bicycle name meant a lot to us. Same thing with Maverick. We thought it was just like a good, like what names work well for what's on the streets. Park Avenue, obviously, we want to continue that extension of Park Avenue down the main road. And the last one was Morgan Way. There's been a lot of discussion around the name Morgan. But in these discussions, we thought, so originally United States Playing Card was the Russell and Morgan Company. If you step back how it was actually an extension of the Cincinnati Enquirer where they got the printing presses and they made circus posters and all this stuff. But who was Mr. Morgan? Mr. Morgan was a Civil War veteran, was a volunteer, and he chose to move this company to Norwood. And the importance of veterans just in general for Norwood and for this site, we thought was important. We also talked about, we thought, well, maybe we'll name the streets after veterans because there's a lot of fantastic veterans we can name it at. But then in a tour of the United States Playing Card facility about a month or so ago, they walked us through the halls where they actually have plaques. And on those plaques are people that lived in Norwood, worked in that factory, and were off in servant war. 4 of those people died who were active employees of that factory during World War I and World War II. And we started to get to a point where we can't choose 4 names. We do have the names. I have copies of the plaques. And we didn't want to go down a hole of choosing one name over another to feel more important or less important. So as a company, what we have decided to do is find a way to recreate those plaques and put them at the base of the clock tower. So that way we have a way to honor the veterans that served. And then we've also named it after a veteran who co-founded the company where all the veterans went on to work. So there was a lot of thought process that went into it and a lot of wanting to honor people, but at the same time, not pick favorites. So we thought the best way to do it was honor the founder and then find a way to honor veterans throughout the site in what we're doing. So that's how the names were derived, sir.
Seems pretty well thought out to me.
I love it.
Thank you.
If I could follow up. I guess, have all of these been vetted, meaning have you looked at each of these? Is there a Maverick Drive 2 miles over in another community that we're not aware of because we don't live on Maverick? Have you looked at each of these? Clearly Park Avenue, there's 1,000 Park Avenues just in Ohio, but it's an extension. It just makes
Correct.
sense to extend that straight on down. It's just going to be Park Avenue.
Correct. We vet them to the post office. So that's the closest thing we could do, and there's not another one of those in Norwood.
But okay, the Maverick Drive,
They told us Maverick Drive was fine.
Bicycle
Boulevard.
Boulevard.
No other.
Drive and Boulevard can be interchangeable. I mean, that's just, we were like, what sounds good as a word more than
But I mean,
anything.
even if you have a bicycle boulevard, I doubt you're going to have a bicycle boulevard in Westchester. But that could be confusing to people.
Correct.
At times. I mean, have you vetted it to that point or not really?
We did not go out that far, sir, no.
Okay. I understand and appreciate your work that you did looking up Morgan Way and tying that all together. I think that's the right way to do it. I think that it does lend itself to the history. Maverick Drive, there were Maverick brand playing cards.
Yes, sir, there
Right.
were. That's where Maverick came from.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the work you did on putting this together. Can you tell us, I understand Park will continue, just basically continue straight on down where Park Avenue is, working sort of, what will be the I guess perpendicular to Park would be on the back line. Is that Maverick or is that Bicycle?
Maverick's to the north, so your first road on the north, which is the current asphalt road that's currently on the property, that'll be Maverick.
Okay.
The middle is Bicycle, and then we have Morgan. We really like the name Maverick. We thought it was a great name to put on the site, but we also had this understanding that this is more of an office street. We wanted to be more conscious in that, so people are more health conscious. We were thinking of where do we kind of want to place these names that fit right? So that's why the Bicycle Boulevard kind of goes along that office way. And that's why we chose that name, because it was just more recognizable there. And of course, Morgan was the primary frontage for our residential buildings.
I don't have any other questions.
I don't have any either.
Thomas?
No.
Well, if we have a motion from the Planning Commission members to approve these names,
I would make the motion that we approve and adopt these names for the new streets.
I'll second it.
Motion offered by Mayor Snyder, seconded by Jeannie Sickinger. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Murphy,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Item 3, revision of the approved final PUD plan for Factory 52 as per S 1155.26 of the zoning ordinance. The PUD development shall conform to the approved final plan. The Factory 52 PUD was approved by council on 1/26/21. Once approved, there should be no alterations, additions, or deletions from the plan, related documents, or the site. During council's April and May review and approval of the CRA and TIF tax abatements, changes to the PUD site plan were discussed, e.g. the parking garage. However, no amendment to the PUD was ever formally approved. Over the past 3 weeks, the city has received building permits for a 2-story, 306-stall structure parking garage, B, a 4-story, 122 DU apartment building titled Central Green. Item C, a 4-story, 118 DU apartment building. As part of the permit review, the following items were noted. Parking spaces would be 19 feet long, 9 feet wide, and 22 feet access aisles between the rows. Landscaped aisles to be provided between each 15 car spaces, and the garage facade should include a special design treatment. As per S 1155.26, the Planning Commission may authorize minor changes, providing that the overall density does not increase. The purpose of this agenda item is to discuss the above noted changes and make a determination. Nickling and Felser, the applicant, PLK Communities will be in attendance and has submitted the attached plan illustrating the proposed parking garage. Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. As indicated, after the Planning Commission meeting, there was some concern that when we got our final PUD approval, that there might not be enough parking on that far side. So we went back and we added an additional 300-space garage. There's actually about 150 spaces there before, and we added basically a top on it. That was then further discussed at City Council, but he is correct, it was not changed. What I attached for you all is the actual original site plan PUD with the garage laid over the top to show you effectively that there was almost no change to what was approved other than the garage. It should be noted that the garage, so when you're coming down Morgan Way, can I say that now? So when you're coming down Morgan Way, it's actually at grade. So the garage is a grade level garage because that site falls off. So visually, from the main part of the development and on the public road, which is Morgan Way, because Kenilworth is actually a private road that's jointly owned between us and US Playing Card, that garage is at or below grade. The grade then falls off roughly 6 to 7 feet. Along the Kenilworth side, which is the private road that's jointly owned by us and US Playing Card, that building is partially below ground. So Mr. Skelly has a copy, and actually I'm going to go ahead and pass out this just so you can kind of see, but it's in the plans that were submitted, but at least it's a close-up to show you. So what you'll see in here is there's actually a grade line that's dashed. At the grade line along Kenilworth, all you see is a metal fence at eye level because you're going to walk along that metal fence. The rest of the garage is below ground. You do have the crash rail above, but that's a safety thing that we have to have. So 3 things came up in this. The first one and the primary one is the width of the parking stalls. I think that's the main concern. In our other parking garage on the site, which is the factory building, which was approved in the PUD, our stall widths are 8.5 feet. We cannot do 9 because of the concrete posts that are inside the factory that we are saving. If we have to have 9, we cannot save the factory. 8.5 feet, we have Schaefer is our structural engineer. This is called a post-tension garage. It's a specific type of construction that holds the load a certain way. In order to get the stall widths and everything we have, 8.5 feet is the desired stall width. Can we go to 9? Yes, but we lose about 15 parking spaces. In addition to it being at or below grade, I think it's important to note that these are all our residents. This is not a public parking garage. The public garage is part of the overall factory. This is a resident garage for our residents. Our standard stall width in all of our new developments is 8 to 8.5 feet. We're keeping it at that 8.5 foot width. These are not large cars, they're not, again, it's not a general public garage. It is private for our residents in those buildings because that was a concern. Another thing that we were able to alleviate, which was a concern of the Planning Commission, was we originally had the trash in that parking, and we have now moved it in the building. So we did take some of that space from the original parking that you all approved, and we did move the trash into the building, so all of the resident building trash is now hidden as well. So again, I think it's more of a question of the request for an 8.5 feet stall width, which again is standard for what we typically do, which is what's approved in the other garage. We hope to maintain that on this portion. I will note the public spaces on the site are 9 feet because it is more of a public style parking space, and there's roughly 200 surface spaces across the site as well. So again, this is just a request for the garage. There were two other things that were noted in there that I wanted to comment on as well, and it talks about landscape islands and garage facade. Those two subsections come from the zoning code, which talks specifically about structured parking. I believe that's 115132. But those comments are regarding garages that are not designed the same way. So the comments actually in that section says that we must meet one of 4 requirements. One of those 4 requirements does talk about ornamental work, parking islands, everything else. But the other 3 requirements we are in compliance with. So those include being at or below grade. 80% of your building at grade is on your primary road is covered by a building, which we are because we're on the primary road. And then the third one was, again, it's to be located at or below grade of the public right-of-way. So all 3 of those requirements we believe we are in compliance with. I know the plan reviewer didn't necessarily see it that way, but that's why we're here. So the request is that we are okay not to have the islands. Again, because it's a post-tension garage, we're going to have to start adding a ton of weight to a post-tension garage that's not designed to be holding weight for landscape islands. In addition to the original site plan that we overlaid never had those landscape islands either. So I'm not asking for any visual change to basically what was approved. They've just added an additional requirement that was never specifically addressed. It was left vague. So I'm glad to take any questions.
8.5 feet. I think we've challenged and went through differences at different parking spots for developers where they had them even smaller than that. So the standard width is 7.5 to 9 feet for a parking spot. And how deep are these parking spots?
19 feet, sir.
And when you talk about the garage that's owned only by the residential aspect of it, is this a secured garage where they have to buzz in and buzz out?
Correct, it's a safety
gated?
gate, yes, sir.
Okay. So those garage, I don't have a problem with that being 8.5 feet. That's, yeah, it's a little smaller, but that's very typical, I think. I've parked in some garages downtown where it felt like it was even much smaller than that at times.
We try to give it 8 usually.
Yeah. That's not a major concern of mine. The landscape, I didn't follow you all the way on all of the landscape stuff. You're talking about adding weight to the structure, putting the landscape in.
If they're truly planar islands, you'd have to reform the concrete. So it's a post-tension, basically it's the way the weight is distributed on top of there. So if we're putting in large landscape islands every 15 spaces, it has a significant amount of weight that has to be re-engineered for it. I would also note again, it's a private garage that's wrapped on 3 or 4 sides by our own buildings and the factory for American Printing or multicolors to the back, and that's their loading dock.
But what does the question, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but the question is, it makes it more aesthetically pleasing if you're on top, if you're parking there and walking through, but that's not the only reason that we ask for landscape islands and their heat and cool zones and different things like that. Do you have any thoughts on the time? You're not going to be able to see it. If you're not going to see these landscape islands unless you drive to that level.
And our resident.
and are a resident. But you will see them from the buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I would note that you go to, 1 Rookwood and look at their parking garage, and there's no landscape islands on top either. I think it's all a matter of how you typically design it. It is a commercial parking garage where the idea is to maximize parking and remove people from the streets. By adding landscape islands, we're reducing the number of parking spaces available to, I mean, it's all a matter of like, we can do it, but all of a sudden you either lose spaces or you've got to shrink the depths, and it's a micro space now. It's not a full-length parking space. So there are ways to accommodate, but you do change what you're parking out there.
Is there a way to maximize, to make it look more green, for instance? If you can't do the beds, could you do, like at the corner of Smith and where the waterfall was supposed to be, how they have
The Ackerman site there, they have stuff, it's not landscape, that's exactly what I was thinking. They've got some trees on that upper level that are on the corners that soften it.
But you wouldn't have the heavy, the weight that you're discussing, and I understand what you're saying about losing spaces, and that is going to be important. There has to be a way to soften the look of the building.
It's not everywhere throughout that, I mean, you
Right.
go up on that deck, but there is greenery up there. It's just around the outside edges, Nick. It's not each island, and all that.
For instance, boxes, like the big flower boxes, and they change them out, and they have vines that go down the sides. Something as simple as that would change the whole look of it.
If
I'm not
we
as
were,
much worried about the exterior look of it, because the fits that we've seen and the finishes we've seen of the exterior, I wasn't an advocate of putting those flower boxes in and telling them they need to grow greenery down the side of that building. Although I think it looks okay now, I think I'd rather have a real finish to it that looked much nicer. But I do, when you're up on that top deck, there's some greenery on the outside edges of that parking that make it feel less of a parking lot. And
I just don't like the concrete or the blacktop. I would just like to have it soft.
just a big field of concrete.
Mhm. If there's a way to soften it, that would be ideal. Then
You want a suggestion from us? Is that a way you get it? I mean, I think that if you said we're going to do some,
I can try to do pots in the hatched area. Would that work? So you see the hatched areas where you can't kind of turn in the corners and things like that. Would that work?
yes, that's absolutely a step in the right direction.
I
mean,
don't want to wipe
ultimately,
out spaces.
ultimately, we'd love to see, we haven't talked about the lighting that's going to be up there, but doing something around the light post, doing something but it's hard to do because you don't have irrigation up there and all. I mean, I recognize that part too. So, yeah, I think there needs to be some greenery up there, and if you could put them in certain specific areas that help soften it out, I think that would be acceptable to me.
Okay. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, basically 5 hatched areas where we could put some stuff. But to your point, we're going to send somebody out to water them. I mean, it's going to be that.
Yeah. But you're going to have to water a lot of other stuff at this property. I mean,
Well, I
you've
know.
got a lot of greenery, you've got a lot of stuff which is just beautification, and that's what draws people to the property, so,
Understand?
yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? And if we could have a motion,
Can I make one quick comment?
Go ahead.
So on that, so like, those are, because from a permitting standpoint, I think he's looking at, so we can say we'll put pots there, but because they're not permanent fixtures, do we just note on the drawing that we'll have pots in those areas? Because I just want to make sure from a permitting standpoint, do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, so if I could just make a quick
Point your
spiel.
mic over there so people can hear you.
Sure.
Yours right there, Mike, just,
Yeah.
there you go, just turn it toward your lips.
How's that?
There, that's better.
So if I could just frame the issue for the benefit of, obviously, and again, Nick's well aware of it, but for the planning commission meeting, how this whole thing arose. When we first received the 2 sets of plans for the structured parking and for the 122 apartment building, And when the building commissioner, Dan Bly, reviewed it, he raised some valid concerns. And essentially, it's what you seen this very lengthy kind of agenda summary. So from a procedural standpoint, there was concerns that there were changes to the layout plan, i.e. we substituted, or the applicant substituted, a at-grade parking area for a deck parking. So that was issue number one. And there is provision, and I'll just circulate it for the planning commission, that the way the ordinance reads for a planned unit development, that the planning commission has the discretion to approve for changes, despite that provision, if it deems in totality that the changes are minor. So that's the first item. In addition, Dan Bly noted that, and we discussed, that the stall width was about 6 inches deficient. So right now, the ordinance requires 9 feet. We don't make a distinction between at grade or surface. It's 9 feet. The third item dealt with the landscaping provision, which we just discussed as well. They provide sometimes an absolute number by proportion, or sometimes a discussion every 15 stalls. You provide some sort of landscape, whether it's going to be a planter or whatever. And I think with regards to the PUD, there's some flexibility there. And then lastly, which was discussed first, was the matter with regards to, I would say, design aesthetics for parking garages. There's a concern or fear that we don't want ugly buildings. Now, in this case, the northern part will be at grade. The southern part, there was concerns that you would have almost a Berlin Wall effect. And with regards to discussions that we just had, I guess 30 minutes ago when the applicant first arrived, that really, and he handed a handout, that a decent chunk of that will be below grade. So there is a, whatever, a barrier fence, however you just describe it, that would mark where the grade would be. So you wouldn't have a large amount of concrete sticking out like a sore thumb. So I think, again, I really don't like speaking for Dan Bly, but my hope is that he would say, well, fine, that may meet the intent that there's not as much of it concrete that's sticking out. So I think that's hopefully something, but at least circling back, the key provision that Dan Bly was very reluctant to proceed without getting direction from both the law department, and in your package you have an email thread with some direction from Keith Moore, and then also kind of a response back from Dan Bly dated September 30th. So with regards to what we just talked about, I think if the Planning Commission is believing that in totality these would represent a minor, then I think just for fairness to the applicant and for yourselves and for Carrie, just word it such that it helps everything to alleviate. Again, since Dan Bly is not here, then I'll understand what was the Commission's thinking, in addition to having the minutes. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
I think that what he is saying is he'd like to have a motion that accepts the 8.5 wide stalls, parking stalls, and also a motion that includes that the Planning Commission is agreeable to having planting areas or planters, pots, whatever you're calling, in specific. What were the areas that you called them that you said?
They're hatched areas. So if we're looking at the plan right here, you can see in the corners we have these hatched areas where you can't physically park. So if we go into those areas and do plantings in 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 of them, put some type of plantings in those hatched areas. That's because that's where I could put some pots and not have to physically affect my parking spaces.
Those are the two things. Was there one other thing?
And the facade aesthetic is okay.
Yeah, and that's something where I would just point out that the southern wall for the deck parking will be probably no more than 4 to 6 feet above grade. So the
When
southern
you say
part-
southern wall, you're talking about Kenilworth Avenue.
correct.
Well, it's gonna be more than 4 feet above grade.
Yeah, I think there's varies.
You have the cut sheet?
I think the total height is significantly less than what we originally anticipated. So
Oh, above grade on Morgan Way. Because you're gonna be below grade because that site falls off. That's the,
yeah, but the concern was more the aesthetic on the southern end along Kenilworth. That was the concern, really.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying, the garage is more than 4 feet there.
Correct, yeah, but it's nowhere near that was originally anticipated, being whatever, 14, 20 feet.
Do any of the other commissioners have a thought on the 8.5 foot width of the parking stalls?
I think it's fabulous.
I don't know if it's fabulous. You still can't just swing your door open and jump out, you know? It's,
We'll get a
Right.
smaller car.
right, Tom?
Go green.
Driving a 350 make it a little tough.
Yeah, if you're, John?
If it's a pickup truck, I can see 2 pickup trucks parking next, but I mean, what's the average car people have today? I mean,
Our typical residents are driving cars.
Yeah.
I mean, cars to small SUVs.
I can get my Flex in at 8.5. And that's it's huge, it's like a Suburban. I can fit in there, anybody can.
This is specific only to the people in these residential, and the other parking on the site will be 9 feet?
Correct, 9 feet, and then your parallel stalls are 9 feet on the main park roads.
So pretty much all of our parking, our public parking
It's 9 feet
is
wide.
9 feet wide. This is specific to these. Do we need to state that in the motion, that it's specific to this?
And the parking garage, the original parking garage and the original factory is 8.5 as well. But again, that's because the building that doesn't allow for it to be wider.
Yeah. To me, I would encourage that because typically most traffic engineers would allow for reduced sizes if the duration is much longer. So by argument saying, hey, these are exclusively for the residents, that to me is a valid argument.
Is that a restricted use parking structure?
It's key card structure.
So the motion should include private parking?
I would restrain restricted use.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may make a motion, I would make a motion to accept the 8.5 width of the parking stalls specific to the restricted use parking structure. That'll be my first part of this motion. The second part would be that the hatched areas, which there are 5 within the parking structure, would include planters or pots or some sort of landscape materials to improve the aesthetics of the area. And my third part of the motion would be on along Kenilworth Avenue, the southern wall of the parking structure is acceptable at the renderings that we've been provided for this meeting, which is acceptable on this. Mike, is
Right
that
off your plan.
acceptable? Okay.
is there a second to the motion, please?
I'll second it.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Murphy,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Item D, Is a motion to approve the minutes from the August 4th meeting? Is there such a motion on the floor?
I'll second it.
You first, you got a first?
First.
Tom, will you second that?
I'll second it. I've read them even though I wasn't present.
Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Murphy,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney.
Yes.
Item F is to excuse the absent member from today. Could I have a motion to excuse the absent member?
I would make that motion to excuse the absent member.
I'll second that motion. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Murphy,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney.
Yes.
Last item on our agenda is adjournment. I would make a motion, we adjourn this meeting at 4:19. Do I have a second to that motion?
Yes. I'll second
Call
that.
the roll, please.
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Chairman Murphy,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney.
Yes.
If we waited a full minute on the second, then he'd have to change his motion.